Hello, everyone. So glad you could join us today on Lemon Live at 5 on the Don Lemon channel, The Don Lemon Show. We're so glad that you're here. We appreciate you joining us. We're going to take you on a journey that helps you to learn and maybe figure out some things. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. Now, as you guys know, you're here. We have the many hundreds of thousands of subscribers and members that we have is because you like the truth that comes from this program and the truth that comes out of my mouth. I want to play something that I said 7 years ago about Donald Trump, and it caused quite a stir. Here it is.
This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. The President of the United States is racist.
That was in my former life as a cable news host. And when I said that, you would have thought that I punched someone's grandmother in the face. The outrage of all of it. And I was right. And right after that, I gave the receipts about why I thought, not thought, but the evidence about why Donald Trump is racist, including calling Black-led and minority-led nations shithole countries. And there are many other things. His attacks on Black women and Black people. And at that time, he was attacking me and LeBron James. Well, today, Donald Trump and MAGA and his MAGA administration went full racist in front of the American people for the world to see in an unhinged press conference, talking about blaming this crash, unfortunate crash in Washington, D.C. on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's get right to our guests now. Cornell Brooks, is a civil rights attorney, professor at Harvard Kennedy School, the former president and CEO of the NAACP, the National Association of Colored People. David Graham is a staff writer at The Atlantic. He won the Toner Prize for Excellence in National Political Reporting in 2021 for his coverage of the 2020 presidential election. And he wrote today so eloquently about what he saw at that podium and what he is seeing in this administration. First to you, Cornell Brooks. When you heard that unhinged press conference with the newly minted Secretary of Defense, the newly minted Transportation Secretary, the new Vice President, and returning President, all touting DEI, saying that they have to stop jobs from going to basically Black people and they should go to qualified white people instead. What did you think?
Well, first of all, I take note of the absence of sympathy and the overwhelming abundance of blame. And I would call it like this, a kind of melanated scapegoating, a kind of color-coded blame. And I take note of the fact that the president has literally turned an acronym, DEI, into another acronym, REI, namely race and ethnic incitement. Incitement as in incitement to professionally marginalize Black people, Black workers. When you think about the fact that we have Army pilots and air traffic controllers whose competence is being called into question with no facts, no evidence. The contents of the black box are yet unknown. And the first act of the president, the commander-in-chief, the consoler-in-chief, is not to speak to the grieving victims, the families, a nation, but it is to literally scapegoat Black people. This shows a level of moral vacuousness that is hard to wrap your head around. And going back to the clip that we began this segment with, namely your clip calling the president a racist, you were in fact true. Yeah, you weren't necessarily prophetic or prescient. You were in fact taking note of the facts. So here we are today with the President Trump in the office, in the White House for a second time, and literally his racism is manifest. It's obvious to anyone who's willing to take note of what's happening.
Let's go to David Graham. David has a piece in The Atlantic. Donald Trump is just watching this crisis unfold, but he is not taking charge. This piece is fascinating. David, you wrote this today, and as you were watching this all unfold, give us a history of this piece and why you came out so hard about what you were seeing at this press conference and what you're seeing with this administration.
Yeah, I mean, even before this press conference, you saw Trump overnight on Truth Social, talking about just basically speculating about what had happened and just tweeting what he's seeing on TV. And it's such a strange role for a president to do that. He seems much more interested in sort of commenting on it and being just a voice than actually doing anything about it. Like, this is a man who is the commander in chief. This, helicopter is in his army. He has unparalleled resources to be investigating what's happening. And what he's doing is just like kind of running his mouth. And we saw more of this at the press conference. Like, if it weren't bad enough for the president to sort of offer no sympathy and to wade into this with speculation and to sort of, place blame on all kinds of people, on the air traffic controllers, on the pilots, then for him to turn this into this sort of racist talking point was really astonishing.
Even you covering this president and watching press conferences from his first administration today, I feel like it was a new low even for Donald Trump. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been used to this, and maybe that's part of it. But I was astonished. It was hard to remember something quite like this, and the way he's, you turn DEI into something he can basically use it as a slur. He doesn't have to say the things he can't say because everyone knows what he's talking about when he says DEI. He's saying Black people shouldn't have these jobs.
Cornell, it's not even a dog whistle. It's out in the open. It is a bullhorn. And for any of the MAGA folks or any of the people who are making excuses for Donald Trump, there is no excuse for this. This is flat out, blatant, in your face broadcast around the world racism.
It is racism, but oddly enough, it is also incompetence. And here's what I mean. At a moment in which we literally have bodies in the Potomac River, a moment in which we have the planes still in the river, the president doesn't issue a charge to the nation to surround these families. One. Number two, he doesn't issue a charge to collect the facts, bring the facts forward in the most transparent and expeditious fashion. What he does is take it as a political opportunity to weaponize Black people. That's a matter of dereliction of duty, right? He has a responsibility since he oversees American aviation through his officials, through his appointments, which he heretofore has not done a great job. Meaning, he summarily fired people. Then he, on the back of this tragedy, he puts in some acting leadership. The point being here is, I would say to MAGA, if you're not offended by the racism, shouldn't you be offended by the sheer level of presidential incompetence, right? Does he have a grasp of the facts? So much so that he goes past blaming to actually trying to find out what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again.
This is, let's see, Pete Hegseth, who is the newly installed defense secretary, speaking of, before there's the investigation is just getting started. This is his assessment about how he's going, what happened at the DOD and how he plans to lead the next 4 years. Here it is.
What the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you.
Okay, so that was him. And then also, I'm going to show something of J.D. Vance a little bit later. And also, I think we have one of Sean Duffy as well, who is the Transportation Secretary. Here's the thing. You couldn't know, optics are important. 4 white men standing up there talking about merit-based. Most of them, I'm just being honest, are not qualified to do the job. There is nothing in Pete Hegseth's history, experience, resume that qualifies him to be the defense secretary. Okay. J.D. Vance barely was elected to office, and now he is the vice president of the United States. Donald Trump is a convicted criminal most convicted criminals sadly, in many cases, cannot get jobs and would not be qualified to be the president of the United States. Donald Trump is a terrible businessman. These are facts. If you look at the analytics and people who have studied it, if he had just saved the money his father gave him, he would have more money than he does now after trying to run businesses. A man who bankrupts casinos. Who bankrupts a casino? The house always wins. It's rigged against the person. And so he has bankrupted casinos. So in their definition, this isn't the actual definition of DEI, Cornell. In their definition,
That's right.
they are in fact, in their definition, DEI hires, people who got the job and who are not qualified for the job. And remember, Sean Duffy started out as a reality show, The Real World, as a character on that reality show, and then became a Fox News host.
That's right. Don, I'd like to remind the Secretary of Defense of two black men, two generals, Benjamin O. Davis Sr. and Benjamin O. Davis Jr., both of whom were pioneering generals. The first, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., among the first black generals, if not the first black general, and of course, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., a Air Force general. These are two black men who had to fight for the right to fight for their country. And so to have a Secretary of Defense besmirch the professional standing of people of color in the military, people who serve in aviation, is unconscionable. And it's not only unconscionable, it's ignorant. That is to say, Colin Powell served in that building, okay? Yours truly, I was born on a military base, Army doctors saved my life. My father was an Army officer. My brother was 82nd Airborne, and they, let me be clear here, they represented a high standard of excellence. So to have these incompetent, ignorant white men besmirch the standing of our people is, at least if you're going to have somebody insult you and insult your competence, they should in fact at least be competent. But it is insulting to have the incompetent insult the glaringly competent. And this is in fact what we have on a daily basis from this administration.
David, two things for you. How do you think MAGA loves this? Do you think they're applauding it? And what about the American people in general?
I mean, I think MAGA does love this. They love these attacks on DEI, again, because they know exactly what they mean. And I think it resonates with them. And I think that's something that throughout his political career, we've seen these appeals to racism. I mean, throughout his business career even, but obviously you go back to 2015 in the escalator speech, it starts right off with appeals to racism, sometimes coded and sometimes not all that coded. So I think they eat that up. But, in moments like this, what we see is the country wants someone who's going to bring them together, someone who's going to be consoling and comforting. And that's not what we see. We see Trump coming out today, wanting to cast blame. We don't know who is in the cockpit of that airplane, in the cockpit of that helicopter. We don't know who is in the air traffic control tower, but he's just out there to cast blame. He's not interested in doing any of those things, and he's not interested in getting the facts. He even said, we don't have any facts, but we have opinions, and we're going to be airing them. And he did.
Yeah. Here's a reporter asking him that very question. Watch.
On DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah, please.
Let's talk about this. David, I'll give you a shot at it first. this comes very close. I mean, is this some sort of eugenics talk about the greatest among us and I mean, what
Psychologically superior? Yeah, it sounds like that to me. And the other thing is, just a moment after that in that press conference, I think, or a few minutes later, he said, when someone asked him the question again, he said it was just common sense that DEI was to blame for this. I want to know whose common sense and what kind of common sense that is.
Yeah.
Cornell, what is it? We all know about eugenics, right? We all know about this whole, let's just be honest, the whole sort of having the qualities that people want and the Aryan nation stuff and all of that. We've dealt with eugenics before. And now, is it coming back? What do you make of that, what he said?
Yeah, there's an ugly history that is invoked by the president's rhetoric. Namely, we had this pseudoscience going back to the days of slavery, where we have white supremacists theorizing as to the shape of Black people's heads and the size of their brains, and this having to do with their innate inferiority. Of course, this has been debunked again and again, both empirically and in terms of scholarship, and also by the obvious brilliance of Black people beside obviously incompetent white people. Now, in addition to that, I would take note of the fact that as the president is literally insulting Black people all across this country, he is also imperiling the work of the country. And what I mean by that is, in every federal agency, the quality of the agency, and I've served in two federal departments, the Department of Justice and the FCC, the quality of the workforce and the quality of the work depends on the people you're able to recruit. So if you have if you have a president who's insulting communities of color, people of color, it makes it hard to recruit people into the military. It makes it hard for people to recruit the best and the brightest into these federal agencies. And so this president, by his racism, is not merely insulting Black people, he's also imperiling the mission of the federal workforce. And so again, I get back to this question of not merely racism, but competence. Good leaders don't insult the people they're ostensibly trying to lead. And there are a great many white people who are served by Black and brown people in the federal service. So this is, this press conference was just unbelievable.
I want to keep that, imperiling the mission of the federal workforce. Hold on to that, because I want to talk about, before we get to that, we're going to talk about the freezing of federal funds and so on and so forth. But I want to play, this is from the vice president, who's basically saying that this is some sort of what people call reverse racism. And I say, well, there's actually no reverse racism. That would mean equality. But he's talking about anti-white racism in this case. Here is J.D. Vance.
It said that I think bears re-emphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think.
Okay, well, but he said flat out that white people were being turned away from jobs. Was that him or no? That wasn't Hicksett. That was him. That white people were being turned away from jobs, and they had to stop it. Did you catch that part of the press conference, David?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of Jesse Helms when I was watching that. It sounds like the famous Jesse Helms White Hands ad. It's exactly the same sort of rhetoric we heard back then. That was in the 90s. We heard him doing that in the 80s. And here we have this at the White House podium in 2025.
Cornell, what did you think when you heard that white people have stopped turning qualified white people away from jobs for?
Well, I would say to our dear vice president, as a civil rights attorney who's represented all kinds of people, there are white people who face discrimination, certainly in the context of discrimination based on disability and even race and ethnicity. But the reality is the overwhelming amount of discrimination in this country is targeted toward Black and brown people. And I would note here, whenever you hear these claims of reverse racism, here's what you don't hear after the claim. You don't hear facts, you don't hear statistics, you don't hear any cases cited. I would also note this, look at all the DEI laws that have been passed in state legislatures across the country. My colleagues and I looked at those laws, and what we found is you never find, literally, any statistics, any studies, any evidence And so we simply have at the vice presidential level what we see at the state level, claims made without facts given. And again, this speaks to a level of leadership incompetence. Generally speaking, good leaders make arguments based on facts, particularly when they have the responsibility of serving the American public.
And I think that's exactly what Trump is doing when he talks about common sense too. Common sense is a code for it's an appeal to emotions. I don't have facts behind this, but it's how I feel.
That's right. So I don't have to show you any evidence. You know what it is. And basically his feelings, I guess those feelings are racist feelings, as with those men there. What is it? David, before we let you go, because I know that you got to leave. We have you for a short time. But before we let you go, this is what they ran on: demonizing minorities, people in underserved communities, Black people, trans people, LGBTQ, and so on and so forth. You said this happened in the 80s. That seemed like sounded like Jesse Helms. We dealt with this in the 80s and 90s. And it feels like this is a reversion of the progress that America has made, and nothing really matters anymore. And in your writing, you kind of convey that, I believe, without just flat out explicitly saying it, because you talk about the moment where he insults Pete Buttigieg, and you go through just the shocking moments here. Does nothing matter anymore as you are out reporting these stories, covering the administration and talking to people around the country? Do people just not care about facts?
I still think it does matter. And I think when people were exposed to this during the first Trump administration, it turned them off. They did run on this, but they also ran on other things. And I think people were upset at the Biden administration for a variety of reasons. And I have to hope that when they see this sort of approach, which is all about finger pointing, isn't interested in the facts, isn't interested in solving problems, and is just reversion to sort of these racist terms, I hope that is going to turn people off. And so I guess we'll have to wait and see, but that's my hope.
David, thank you. David from The Atlantic, a fabulous writer. His piece is in The Atlantic today. I suggest that you go and get it. Donald Trump is just watching this crisis unfold. Go onto The Atlantic website. By the way, let me just shout out the folks at The Atlantic. As you guys know here in independent media and on the Don Lemon Show, we like to point out the people who are doing the right thing, not the people who are bowing to, taking a knee to the administration and just bowing. The Atlantic does that, and they do it without fear or favor. And so we're going to have more writers and more contributors from The Atlantic on. They're doing it right. Make sure you support them. Go to theatlantic.com, sign up, and learn some things. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cornell, I'm tired. No, I'm serious. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I watched it today in disgust. And I looked at all those people standing there, and I said, if it wasn't for the privileges that you have in this country because of who you are, you would not be standing on that stage or at that podium. If your father hadn't given you every opportunity, you would not be standing at that podium. Sure. If there weren't people in this country who did not care about racism, they say that they're not racist.
That's right.
But yet they overlook a lot of racism. And today they simply don't understand, if they are still supporting this, they don't understand the problem in America and how deeply rooted racism and bigotry and hatred are in this society.
Yeah. Let me put it this way, Don. I certainly have my days when I'm tired. Not unlike Martin Luther King, who said, in effect, that he was not merely tired of racists, but also tired of those who tolerated them. And we are exhausted in this moment by those who are essentially apologists and excuse makers for the racism of the White House, or they choose to overlook what is in fact obvious. And the thing that is distressing to me is so many of we the people, as opposed to them, are imperiled by this White House. So in other words, it's not merely trans people, not merely black and brown people, not merely migrants and immigrants. This whole country is imperiled by the xenophobic, racist governing philosophy of this White House. So in other words, there are many good things that are not being done as these people engage in bad rhetoric and bad policy, right? The safety of the country, I believe, is imperiled when you engage in these xenophobic attacks, racist attacks, don't come to grips with the facts as you govern. And to your point about competence and the president being given every opportunity in the world, he's extending his personal privilege into presidential appointments by bringing people forward who are manifestly unqualified. How do you put somebody in charge of the Civil Rights Division with no experience in civil rights, and or not particularly a lot of litigation experience? How do you put someone in charge of the FBI who's a partisan, who has an enemies list? How is this even possible, right? I'm hoping that MAGA America wakes up and realizes that this government is not merely not serving us well, it's not serving you well. And I'm hoping they wake up sooner rather than later.
What do we do, Cornell? I mean, you were head of the National Association of Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. Is there anything that we can do at this moment? Because just think about it. Control of every branch of government, Supreme Court that's on his side, and a very vocal and loud and, sometimes violent base.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a whole lot we can do, some of which you are doing, right? Right now, you strike me as a modest person, but you're standing in the lineage of Ida B. Wells and William Monroe Trotter, right? Which is speaking truth to power. You're speaking in the lineage of like fierce journalists who understand that in these authoritarian moments, speaking truth to power advances democracy, right? That's number one. The press is critical in this moment. And I would argue this is a tragic opportunity. All these things that are happening to us are not good, but it is an opportunity for us to get stronger, become more resilient, become more resistant. One. Two, I think it's incredibly important in this moment for us to double down and invest in young leadership and infrastructure that supports them. In other words, organizations that support them. I think this is critically important. And number three, realize that there are times when it's really, really hard, really, really difficult, really, really dangerous. Those are the moments in which you organize. Those are the moments in which you message. Those are the moments in which you innovate. So in other words, is 2025 more difficult than say 1955 or 1945? I don't think so, right? So in other words, we saw some of our best journalists in some of the darkest and most dangerous times of American democracy. And we've seen some of our best leaders during the darkest, most dangerous times of American democracy. So I would say to our organizations, this is the time to organize. This is the time to innovate. This is the time to be bold, to be strong. This is not the time to try to find the right vocabulary of appeasement to persuade people to go along with your oppression. That has never been a winning strategy. Only those who are illiterate with respect to history think that that's the way to go. So yeah, let me put it this way. Right now, this podcast, this streaming platform that you're on right now, you're unfettered, right? You can say words that you couldn't say before, but this is also true for the rest of the country. So it's a moment of tragic opportunity, and it's a time for us to do work and innovate on work in ways that we haven't done before.
Cornell Brooks, I think that's a good place to leave it. Cornell, I appreciate your wisdom. I hope that you will come back. I love the work that you do. Continue to do the work that you do and keep speaking truth to power and holding the powerful accountable. Thank you so much, sir.
So grateful to you. Thanks, Don.
And I appreciate your words. I'm grateful for your words as well. Thankful for your words, as a matter of fact. Thank you, the great Cornell Brooks, the former head of the NAACP, a professor, attorney, civil rights attorney, a professor at Harvard Kennedy School, and again, the former president and CEO of the NAACP. So let me talk to you, since Cornell is gone and gave me some, thank you, brother, and gave me some inspiration to talk to you guys. and I say I'm tired, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. That means I'm tired of the bullshit. And that means I'm tired of people pretending that things aren't the way that they are. Do we live in a racist country? Yes, we do. So stop pretending America is not racist. It is a racist country. It doesn't mean that everybody in the country is racist, but it's fucking racist, okay? And the example of that were those unqualified frat good old boys standing at the podium today lecturing Americans on who is competent and who is not, when they are the height of incompetence. A president who is a convicted felon, an adjudicated sexual abuser, a secretary of state whose resume is so thin you could shave with it, who is an admitted and known philanderer, who is accused of abusing women, who has multiple substantiated accounts of abuse and anger issues and alcoholism. And you have the nerve to lecture America about people who are unqualified? You are unqualified. You should not be standing there. You should be grateful, as a matter of fact. Sean Duffy, Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, you should be grateful to the Black people in this country who fought for civil rights, who fought for affirmative action, and who fought for diversity, equity, and inclusion, because without it, you would not be where you are right now. The biggest recipients of DEI, white women, white male executives. I'm looking at all four of you. The nerve you have. You're inviting people into the White House, streaming podcasts. As they say it to my face. Say the shit to my face. Let me in the briefing room. I'm ready. I'm there every day to hold you accountable and not to acquiesce and not to be scared, to be in your face, which is what the media is supposed to be doing right now, and they are not. Too cordial, too civil. We've got to be buttoned up. No, you don't. You have to meet this shit to where it is. Meet them with the same energy. Media, meet them with the same energy. MAGA should be embarrassed of today. MAGA should be embarrassed today. Embarrassed of how their leader acted, embarrassed about how the other leaders acted, embarrassed. Sorry, I said the Secretary of State, I meant the Secretary of Defense. Thank you, producers. All the allegations you just raised about Hegseth you attributed to Rubio. No, I did not. Secretary Rubio was not on the stage, so no one should get that confused. But MAGA, you should be embarrassed today. Donald Trump, you have no shame. I'm not expecting you to be embarrassed. I don't know if Pete Hegseth has any shame, or J.D. Vance, or any of the people, Sean Duffy, who's up on that stage. 4 white men lecturing America about racism. Are you kidding me? Do you know the history of this country? A history in which, as a matter of fact, J.D. Vance wrote about in many ways, especially as it relates to poor people. And now all of a sudden you're standing there and you're trying to lecture people saying that normal people, whatever that means, should not be in these jobs. What is that? Everyday Americans should not be in this job. Aren't you listening, MAGA? He's talking about you. Yet you still like, I love him. Oh my God, I love him. Dear leader. You should be embarrassed to, how can you call yourself Americans? How can you call yourself patriots? The bodies aren't even in the ground yet. And you have the nerve to insult Americans and the families of everyone who is involved in this. It's an insult to them, especially the hardworking folks who served this country, who were on this plane. The innocent lives that were lost, the flight attendants, the people who were just traveling, trying to get from one place to another. And you have the nerve to stand there and try to blame other people. You know what a real president does? You know what a real leader does? You know what a real patriot does? They take responsibility. They say the buck stops with me. They say, I'm sorry for my fellow Americans. I love you and I have your back. Not that it is Black people's fault or gay people's fault, and then you insult Pete Buttigieg with some underhanded, he's a disaster. Because we know what you're saying. You're trying to say that he was a DEI hire. And the man is smarter than all four of you put together, plus some, including the person you want to be head of the HHS who has no medical degree, including Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, do I have to say anything of Tulsi Gabbard, who will say anything to get a job or to be liked, to get to the front of the line? Who will even change her parties and her stance so that she could get to the front of the line faster. Pete Buttigieg could run circles around you before he even gets out of bed in the morning. All of you. Kash Patel, give me a break. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You wanted Matt Gaetz to be the attorney general? Laughable. Talk about not qualified in a DEI hire. How about being Nepo babies? It's insulting to the American people, and you should be embarrassed. And actually, you should apologize. America should demand for all of you to apologize. But you have no shame. You have no shame. You just want power and to enrich yourselves. So pissed. Let me in that briefing room. Let me in that briefing room. We've got a live stream that's private for our members. If you want to go there, you can go and hear the rest of what I have to talk about. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. A couple people I want to shout out before I go. Opinionated Presents. Glam Print gave us a pretty big donation. There it is. Thank you for your support of independent media. As a U.S. Army retired veteran and a former federal government employee, the division this president is causing amongst the masses, DEI, aka woke per Trump, which is affecting all women employed in this country, insane to me. Thank you. You're right on 100%. Elva Rodriguez, thank you for your support of independent media. This is the time to get involved in our community and to see where you can help. There's elections coming up. Let's put our feet in the ground. We need to stand for something or fall for nothing. You stand, I think it goes, you should stand for, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for nothing. Keep saying F DEI, calling the crash DEI is building up to something far worse. Stay woke and own woke. 10 times in the Bible, God commands us to open our eyes. That's why they hate woke. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for your support. So many people here. Trump is a DEI in his version. He is. In his version of what DEI is, he is. So look, I want to thank you all for your support of independent media. If you want to become a member, it's in the top of our chat. The link is. Make sure you subscribe. And thank you for making my wish for March 1st, my birthday, to come true. 500,000 subscribers. We're on our way, well on our way. 450,000 subscribers. This is where you're going to get the truth. Not people pulling punches, not people sitting around yelling at each other, nothing getting accomplished, not being afraid to say anything because they don't want to mess up their corporate business. I'm speaking to you, media. We're coming for, as they say, the mainstream media, independent media is. We're coming for you. This is where the real voices are heard. The unfettered truth gets told here. We are unchained. We are emancipated. We are free to speak our minds and tell the truth and wake up the American people, to open your eyes. America, wake up. They're trying to keep you fighting. Even today, they're trying to keep you fighting over diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, which helps America. But they're trying to keep you divided, fighting about things amongst yourselves while they're getting richer and more powerful. If you want to hear more truth, join us over on our private stream. If you are on here, you will get it will direct you over. Stay on this link, and then another link will take you to where we're going now. If you're not a member, and it's for the top two levels of our membership, I should say, the Lemon Heads and the Lemon Legends. All right. So you have to join at that level in order to go on the private stream where we're really going to have a good time. Thank you, babe Beatrice. And we're going to talk about this crap. And you're going to blow off some steam, get your comments. We're going to get it out over on our private stream. Even same thing on our TikTok. We're going to subscription on our TikTok right now. So if you're on, switch to subs only, subscribe on TikTok, and you'll get to be where we are. So see you on the regular feed. We'll see you on our other feed. Love you for watching. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.